Hello everyone, and welcome to beautiful Langkawi. This is my first Asia Pac NetEvents, although I've been to several NetEvents in Europe and other parts of the world. My name is Easley. I'm the Vice President of Product Marketing and Product Management for Accedian. Accedian is the leading supplier of service performance tools for carrier internet networks. So we've been involved in a number of projects around the world helping operators deploy mobile broadband services, including HSPA++, as well as LTE. So, and I'm also I'm working with, there's several of us here from the MetroPCS forum, and we've been working to drive the carrier Ethernet standard for use in mobile backhaul networks over the past few years. And, so I'll be sharing some of those experiences in this talk.
I'm Mehmet. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Genband. Genband is about a decade-old company, but I've been a veteran of NetEvents, seems like the last 6 years, and been to APAC, Media and Analyst event, and as well as service provider events last at least 6 years continuously. And we had a recent acquisition that you may have heard. When Nortel bankrupted, they divided their divisions into 4 groups. And John McHugh mentioned about the Voice over IP group, the Voice division. We acquired that last year. So against to our #1 leadership position on media gateways, that put us in a soft switching leading vendor position globally. Along with that, we had several acquisitions on the session border controller and very detailed OEM arrangements on traffic policy management. So we basically expanded our portfolio to become one of the end-to-end solution supplier for core of the network, both wireline, wireless, and cable. And we are leading wireline and cable market, being the #1 leadership position on soft switching media gateways.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'd like to start off things by introducing something I really didn't talk too much about yet, which is voice. And just citing another analyst forecast, hasn't to be global, and why not? In 2010, globally, using our numbers, mobile operator revenues were roughly $900 billion. 27% of that was voice, 73% is, sorry, 73% is voice, 27% data. Looking at 2015, we expect voice still to be about 63%. So maybe 55 or maybe 70. That was really slow, but it's not going to be down to 30 or 20 based on current projections. Given that context, what do you think is driving operators to deploy LTE now rather than later?
Okay. Well, your numbers are pretty close to mine, and of course we use multiple analyst firms such as yours. And when you look at the 900 billion market, and which the data was only a handful of percentage just 3 years ago, now grew to about 27%. It's very significant. But who's paying the bill? It's voice and SMS, right? That they are paying the bills for this mobile data explosion. And we cannot escape from that. Like we mentioned also earlier in our presentation, on the more developed countries, and maybe financially a little bit healthier countries, there's an explosion of mobile data. And just to give you another statistic, we exited 2010 with an average mobile usage being about 215 kilobits per second. Projection is next 5 years, the compounded annual growth rate is 60%, so that will reach to 2.2 megabits. And if you look at the smartphones, the Androids and iPhones of this world, already last year they exceeded the 1 megabit, and it's going to about 4.4 megabit. So data congestion is happening. There's no escape from upgrading these networks. Although HDPA and HDPA Plus serves the purpose in certain areas, but it's not going to cope with the data explosion. And again, this morning, another analyst firm announced that China is taking a sweet time, and it's going to take probably 2014, 2015 to basically launch LTE versus both NTT Docomo and SoftBank, which have about 90 million subscribers. will be very aggressive this year. Even after the tragic tsunami, they plan to ramp up on LTE. And on the North America side, Verizon is very aggressive, which is one of our leading customers. MetroPCS, I saw them on your list. MetroPCS actually bypassed 3G in the US. They launched it in, first market was in Texas, where I come from, in August. And in January, they were already in 20 markets with a LTE solution or service itself. I believe that, this is the debate session, so I started debating during my first speech. But I believe in LTE and voice over LTE. And I also believe that you cannot hold on to two desperate networks. One for data, one for voice for a long time. Initially, it's a good idea, like AT&T is doing. But long term, it's not for something.
Yeah, and I would tend to agree that clearly the driver behind the move to these faster broadband technologies, including LTE, is data. I mean, with all of the smartphones and handsets going faster and faster with cooler and cooler applications on, no operator wants to be in the position of AT&T several years ago when they rolled out the iPhone, and their network was woefully prepared for the data tsunami that happened to AT&T. So you're seeing LTE rollouts in earnest. There's commercial LTE products available in the U.S. and Japan, as Mehmet said, also in the Nordic region in Europe. So it is happening. There are commercial commitments throughout Asia, including here in Malaysia, Indonesia, China, where operators have made public commitments to move to that technology. Today, it's clearly a phenomenon that's being driven by data.
So you both mentioned the data exploding, but we recognize that revenues aren't coming with the explosion. And that's what the operators care about, right? So what advisors can you offer operators that need to ramp down that traffic to keep it under control? You mentioned DPI and our discussion this morning, for example.
I think the operator service provider models on their pricing and charging their services are going to change. And instead of being a bundled service, we're going to see more value-added services to be tariffed and priced separately. And when you look at the traffic patterns, when you look at the congestion, now we do have new technologies being deployed. This used to be beyond SGSN, GGSN, the deep packet inspection of traffic policy management. We're giving data to service providers, but after the fact. After the congestion happened, there wasn't much anything they could do, just get the history, why it happened, why they lost the traffic, why the congestion was, and so forth. Now, those are placed in the revenue access node, so that you can do something about it. And you can either increase the capacity, or change the tariff, or block the subscriber. If you see that a tremendous and unnecessary usage of only handful of subscribers, really congesting the base station and the serving area. So we're going to see that there's a new terminology, and for my tomorrow's presentation, we call it freemium service. Freemium. Free means the basic service is free, and you subsidize through advertising, and you bring new value-added services on an a la carte basis. So the bundled services, I believe, is moving to a la carte in the near future.
And I think that there's also an opportunity in differentiating yourself and adding value by just the quality of your network offering. And so, as Mehmet said, putting intelligence into the network, and that's certainly where Accedian has seen a lot of traction over the past year and a half or 2 years, is putting that intelligence out in the network at the node Bs and in the base stations, so we can identify congestion and identify issues in the network that are going to affect the quality of experience for the end user before it actually happens, so that the operators can proactively, make adjustments to that, whether that's clamping down on some of the bandwidth hogs or implementing additional resource to help carry that network. So it's really the move towards value-added services starts with improving the quality and reliability of the network itself.
So speaking of congestion, we're focusing on backhaul for a minute. That's still a hot topic nowadays. Can you talk, Greg, a bit about the transition to Ethernet and backhaul networks and how you think operators can really do these transitions well and cheaply, and how can they verify the quality of that link as they do the transition?
that's the interesting question. So everybody's seen the charts where there's just no way that you can continue to deploy legacy networking technologies and keep up with the capacity demands of 3G plus and 4G networks. So the move to Ethernet, is really a forcing function that requires operators to make a fundamental change in their backhaul network. That said, that capacity and the lower cost for that capacity doesn't come for free. Operators have to learn and assimilate new technologies. They've got to be able to roll that out through their operational crews and build intelligence and capability and expertise in their own operational systems. And they also need to make the tools and instrumentation that's going to allow them to effectively monitor and manage the performance of these networks over time. Because if you build a brand new Ethernet network to a few towers and it works great day one, when you've now added 50 or 100 towers to it, when you've now created a more complicated and sophisticated switching infrastructure, that same network may not behave the same. So ongoing performance monitoring is really a fundamental requirement to being able to roll out Carrier Ethernet successfully. That's something that the Metro Ethernet Forum has been working on. We're well along the way of our whole backhaul implementation agreement phase 2, which has a healthy dose of OEM and performance monitoring specified as to what operators need to do to effectively use Ethernet in the backhaul networks.
So another issue that comes with LTE is a lot of operators are deploying LTE for at least initially data only. So you have the 2G DSM focused /WC or video today network in place, and in voice and also some of your data subscribers and traffic. So then you add on LTE, you also manage. When you have both of these networks running at the time, it can be quite messy, and you also may not be getting some of the benefits of this LTE technology. Mehmet, I'm curious about your views. Do you expect this duality to persist over time? And if it does persist, can operators actually get some of the benefits, some of the cost saving benefits of LTE given them their two networks?
Well, let me start with, LTE's main differentiator is being all IP. You had it on your chart as well. And so, on the wireline networks, IP networks start building in the last 5, 6, 7 years. And they're getting there, still not complete yet. And there's a lot of TDM out there, but they are ahead of the mobile operators. It's happening in mobile operators. If you look at the Mobile World Congress just happened 6 weeks ago, one of the highest topics was IP exchange. The new brokerage firms evolving to connect different items of IP so that they can do the mediation and brokerage between the carriers. So with that in mind, there's a progress in LTE deployment, but there are certain different ways to do it. One is sort of switch fallback. I think last year, one of my presentations, I've done that, where are the different elements of taking voice over LTE to the next level. Service switch fallback means you stay for voice in 2G and 3G networks and use only LTE for mobile data. The second is something launched about 2 years ago by T-Mobile called Valueadded. Voice over long-term generic access was the term. And it wasn't adopted by anyone else. So it's really started. It's died away in a year. And a year later, about 14 months ago, GSMA basically launched, which was adopted by Ericsson, NSN, and Huawei, leading companies, called Voice over LTE. And the standards were published recently in September last year. And there's quite a bit of progress on that respect that, that's why Verizon was very aggressive in the recent show on consumer electronics in Las Vegas earlier this year. They were very aggressive saying that they need all the device suppliers to get ready for LTE because they have all the deployments. They already have several friendly deployments around the nation itself. AT&T didn't make any aggressive because they said originally stay on service for fallback, but also they are using broadband dongles and all that already and providing them because they have to keep up with it. And for these service providers, it's very difficult because they own both wireline and wireless. Wireline is not going away. because last 10 years there was a major erosion of wireline subscribers, but it came to a kind of a stable point, drop from 2 billion to 1.4 billion wireline versus we have 5 billion wireless. But the broadband is still a very important condition on the wireline. So if you need to operate two networks like Verizon and AT&T on this world, you really need to find a way to collapse network conversion. And that's where I think my company comes along, because we provide a very elegant migration, so you don't need to rip everything out. You can do a network transformation to 55 or you can do the converged network, connecting satellite, wireline, and wireless networks through our mediation devices that you can be able to communicate different voice structures and standards to each other. So it was a long-winded answer, but it's not an easy answer to give.
Well, I think the word that you used, just used to sum it up, the transition or transformation, is indeed what you'll see. I mean, nobody's rushing to decommission these networks that are already there that are carrying so much revenue, right? So the fact that the two networks will coexist for some period of time is self-evident. That's your cash cow. They're not going to put that in play. I think over time you will see, as the carrier Ethernet backhaul infrastructure gets more sound, as operators get more experience working with that technology, there will be cost advantages to migrating or transforming those networks from the legacy into the carrier Ethernet networks of the future.
One of the other things, maybe just add one more sentence, network transformation, the cost of maintaining the subscriber ones are becoming very expensive. Because when they lost the subscribers on wireline, so now you have price per port to maintain. It's quite expensive. So that's why they are really serious about moving these. And when you have about, let's say, 60 million subscribers, 80 million subscribers, it will take 8 to 10 years to migrate those central offices. When you have hundreds of them, you cannot do overnight. So that's why we saw a major exponential growth last quarter of 2010 from the leading carriers that they wanted network transformation projects launched from us.
Thanks very much. We're probably running out of time. I have 2 more questions, but we do have a little time. I'd like to give the audience a chance to ask questions if there are any. There's a mic at the end, the back of the room. There's a question over here.
Hi, Matt. Your slide got that number stating that mobile data traffic grows at 92% CAGR.
Yeah, that came directly from Cisco's latest forecast.
Yeah. I understand 4G LTE has 20 times capacity of 3G networks, right?
Sorry?
4G LTE has nearly 20 times capacity of 3G networks, right?
It's a really complex question. That's a function of lots of factors.
Generally,
slide 3.
No, it has more capacity than 3G, of course.
Sorry?
It has more capacity than the 3G, right?
Sure.
Okay, so by the time 4G LTE, according to your statistics, that 92% mobile data traffic growth. By the time 4G LTE is implemented, don't you think it's just 20 times more than 3G? And you are going to address 92 times, 92% more mobile data growth. So how does it seem, and what do you think about it?
Well, when we went from 64 kilobits per second connections on the wireline world to, let's say, 2 meg DSL connection up to 10 meg VDSL connections, you don't get that equivalent multiplicative effect in terms of traffic growth before the network is tempered down by all sorts of different factors. That does give me an opportunity, though, to let Mehmet mention DPI, which is one of many tools that mobile operators can use to
where is this happening? Where is it coming from? Which device? Which location? You know, and what time zone, so that you can defund the network or tariff it.
And in fact, our Accedian demarcation devices are being used by one wireless operator to clamp down on voice over IP traffic. So if they see an area where voice over IP traffic is taking up excessive amounts of the data bandwidth, you know, that's at the direct expense of the voice minutes that they're trying to sell. So they're using the technology, you know, at the base station to figure out and rate limit on what some people call undesirable applications.
If an operator wanted to clamp down on iPhones accessing YouTube, would that be possible?
Absolutely, yeah. It's just a different unique port number.
And certain operators, they do.
The simple answer is mobile operators won't allow that 92% to get up to whatever you might think. It could be 300% or 800%. It's just not possible.
Right.
There's no business model that can support building up the capacity to support that. Do we have more time, or is that no more time? Okay, thanks very much. If you could join me in thanking our panelists.
Thank you.